And what we're all saying is that the Alexander technique is a good technique to retrain individuals in how to maximize their functional use when that functional use has been affected by a disease.
The way you sit, the way you stand and walk, the way you bend, push, pull, and lift, the way you do everything, every day, is in large part a result of habits developed over many years. Hello, I'm Frederick Lacey. The world's most interesting mystery is not here on Easter Island, it's not in Machu Picchu, or even in Egypt. The world's most interesting mystery is right inside of you. As an infant, you started out with a naturally upright carriage and way of moving. Your head, although large, was carried in perfect balance over your torso. Your back was upright and free of tension. Very little muscular effort was required to maintain your balance. You could sit on the floor with grace and ease. It was as if gravity didn't exist. But then, for most of us, things began to change. We sat in chairs and began to slump. Learning how to write, we hunched over our desk. Our heads were no longer balanced over our bodies. Sitting in front of the TV and computer intensified the problem. Now, we exerted much more energy to counteract gravity. Muscles that were not needed in infancy were called into action, and other anti-gravity muscles that were so effective earlier were weakened. The effortless sitting of infancy was replaced by sitting with tension in the muscles of our neck, shoulders, and back. Sitting upright became tiring and no longer comfortable, so we allow our back to collapse down into a habitual slump position. This carries over to standing and walking. We walk with rounded shoulders and a constricted chest. Our torso is no longer reaching upward. Muscles that are not really needed for locomotion are used against gravity and to counteract each other. This inefficient posture and way of moving is now a habit.
What we tend to do is slump. We are a culture that exists in a slumping pattern. Now, there's no harsh judgment there, even if you're doing it as you're listening to this.
Likewise, we now habitually bend from the waist instead of using our hips and knees as we did when squatting as infants. There is excessive tension in all our movements. We are misusing our bodies. This habitual misuse commonly leads to aches and pains in our neck and shoulders, and particularly in our lower back. In an attempt to relieve pain, we may now stand and walk with a flattened lower back, bent slightly forward at the waist, with our head held back. Various other configurations may develop. These become habits, all of them not good. We no longer move with ease and poise. Everyday activities are tiring. We lose fluidity and suppleness, which affects every aspect of life, even our golf and tennis games. And in general, we function at a level far below our natural capacity. To make matters worse, we are completely unaware of what has happened to us. These habits are deeply ingrained and now feel normal. As young adults, we generally consider the adverse effects of our poor habits as just inconveniences. For some, however, because of muscle strain and compression forces on the spine, back pain in particular becomes a more serious problem. We seek help from doctors, chiropractors, and alternative medical practitioners. We take painkillers, muscle relaxants, herbal remedies, or a few drinks. We get adjusted, stretched, exercised, and massaged, all with varying degrees of relief. But the underlying habitual misuse is still present, and we continue to suffer. As the years roll by, more and more of us fall victim to significant ailments and disabilities.
Compression in the system is not healthy. We know that osteoarthritis, digestive diseases, migraine, many of the chronic illnesses in our society are a result of compression.
In time, the effects of many years of habitual bodily abuse catch up with most of us. Much of what we have come to expect as old age is in part due to our lifelong bad habits. Of course, there are some among us who, through heredity and a better environment or training, are able to maintain the anti-gravity reflexes of infancy and do not develop bad habits. Some outstanding few excel in sports and other endeavors requiring the best use of their bodies. Tiger Woods, Muhammad Ali, and Fred Astaire, to name a few. We also see examples of good body use in many of the so-called primitive peoples in parts of the third world, where an unspoiled way of life contributes habitually elegant and graceful movement. They are balanced and wonderfully upright. They can walk with a heavy load on their head for miles and are perfectly comfortable squatting. Unfortunately, for most of us in the modern world, bad habits developed over years are a continual drag on our health and overall well-being. And, like all deeply ingrained habits, they are virtually impossible to change. That is, unless you learn to use